Hi, everybody. Recording in progress. That voice. So, welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. It's the day after Veterans Day, and I'm with Flobo Boyce out in LA, and I have truly been looking forward to this because I always look for particulates of commonality with a guest, the things that we share, and we share. Well, he's a real comedian, and I'm not, but I would love to be what he is, a comedian. But he's a million other things, and we just got connected, and it was instant chemistry, and some of the essences of Flobo's book, which I'm going to keep holding up. Graduation day, the fact that he had lost a lot of weight, and I did the same thing differently, but I did, and is trying comedy for the first time. I didn't work out for me, but a lot of, and
I think you're funny.
Yeah, and he's a Brooklyn guy, and my wife out there in the kitchen is a Brooklyn girl. So that Brooklyn thing is part of us, and I lived there for a couple of years. So, and the other, when I was researching Flobo, I found out that he worked at Nakatomi Plaza out in LA, and you all can look up Nakatomi Plaza. I'm not even going to tell you much about it. And so this is going to be so much fun. A lot of fun. So, and actually, he's out in LA and I'm here in Jersey, so different time thing. But my Johnny Carson monologue is officially over, and I am thrilled now to introduce Flobo Boyce, and take it away, and maybe a little bio, and we'll kind of jump into a whole bunch of things.
Well, let me apologize. That was the best intro ever. I just walked all over it. I totally ruined the vibe. I'm sorry, guys. I see you next week. But no, it was great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And yeah, Berkeley kid, let's go Mets. I moved out here in LA in 07 because I wanted to be a filmmaker, and that didn't work out. But yeah, I did work at Nakatomi Plaza. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. I'm so glad to be on part of the show.
Great, wonderful. So, you grew up in Brooklyn.
Bada boom.
Yep, you grew up in Brooklyn, and you. I know you went for your master's in filmmaking. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, or say when I was in high school, I wanted to be a corporate financial analyst. That was to me the dream, because I saw in a book one day that you can make $90,000. I thought that was impossible, a salary that was unattainable. So I went to Academy of Finance program. Basically, that's where a lot of the public schools in New York will put you in little summer internships to get you acclimated to basically wearing a tie and doing the bidding of corporate overlords. But my job was at Citigroup as a media assistant. They did all what they call industrial videos, and I would get the tapes, and I would patch through the little tape or control rooms and watch editors not wear ties, work on projects. I wanted to do that. I wanted to be an industrial video, corporate video editor. So I went to college for that. I got a little bit of the technique of news cutting and what we call E&G. And after that, I go, well, I did news. What's the next step? Well, film. And I go, okay, well, I love editing. I think editing is really cool. And I had dreams of being Cut Master Brown, which is one of Spike Lee's editors. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go out west where the films are made like a factory to become the next hotshot film editor. Didn't work out that way, but that's what got me out here in 07. I went to Chapman University in Orange County, California, and I haven't left since. So I've been, even though I'm from Brooklyn, I've been in California since I was like 22 years old. So I'm in my mid-30s now. I spent my adult life out here. I still think of myself as a Brooklyn kid, but there's a lot of LA in me too.
Funny, I tell my wife all the time, even though she's been here 60, 70% of her life in Jersey, but I still say she's a Brooklyn girl.
Absolutely. It raises you. Yeah.
And I sometimes say I sleep with that Brooklyn accent every night.
I probably appreciate that.
Oh, she doesn't. So let's right off, because I love comedy, and talk about your comedy career. Because I read in graduation day last night, which I I'm not just saying it because you're sitting across from me, but I love this.
Well,
Well,
thank
because
you.
it's real, and you know, it's like you're talking to me. And
Yeah.
you know, I review a lot of books and stuff, and I'm going to review this, by the way.
Oh, thank you,
Oh
man.
yeah, because you're talking to me, and it's so warm and engaging and real. So, but
Appreciate it.
yeah, no, I'm truly, I'm totally enjoying it.
It's funny because I almost didn't write that book at all. Almost didn't write that book at all. This is kind of a sidebar. I
Yeah,
write nonfiction typically. I write nonfiction, short stories and novels. My last novel wasn't great. It wasn't written well the way I wanted it. I kind of pushed it out and forced it out. The reviews were responding in kind, and it really like put so much psychological damage as an author. I just didn't write for like 4 or 5 years. And so, like most things, like I have chapters where I get over fears. This is more of like a I'm going to do it. If no one reads it, I did it. And what I've noticed with graduation days, it is speaking to people. So it's kind of like, oh man, thanks. That means a lot. I really
yeah.
do means a lot to me that it could have been in the trash or stuck in my head forever, but now you're getting something out of it.
No, and and you know, your first comedy thing at the Comedy Store, you were so nervous. You know, you're battling, you know, the nerves. You um by the way, I didn't show you, but I took notes. I don't mess around.
Yeah, you don't.
No, I don't mess around.
He's like, I'm a
No,
journalist. I love it.
so I took notes. And you know, you said that first. You can talk about it in a second.
Mhm.
Uh, but I guess it was Adam Barnhart that said, "Make it funny."
Yeah.
And to me, that is like so powerful. But anyway, what was
Yeah.
that night like? When? How did it come about?
So I was always into comedy. I was into the late night talk shows, and I talked to people who are big fans of late night talk shows. Whether I grew up with Flip Wilson, to me, the Tonight Show will always be with Jay Leno. I love Carson, I love Fallon, but I was a '90s kid, so for me, Jay Leno, Shiny Floor, Kev Eubanks in the corner, or whatever. I want to do that, and I think people who want to do that are from families and homes that are working class or mid class. Because if you have parents who work all the time, they're never happy. But I knew at 11:35, I would get to hear my dad laugh every night, my mom laugh every night. So I knew the importance of laughter after raising a kid. So I always wanted to do that myself. Maybe sometimes I wanted to do more of a variety show, bring back vaudeville for a new audience, but it was something that I said I'll do at one point. We'll talk about this in a little bit later, but I had lost a bunch of weight and I had a surgery to get my skin removed. Which is called an amnioplasty. So I didn't have a lap band. It's kind of like they just get rid of the excess skin, right? They fillet you, right? And my suture line had reopened as a complication of surgery and almost bled out on my couch. And there was a time there I thought I was going to die. And when I thought I was going to die, which if anyone's ever had any death experience, you freak out until you're calm. You go, you know what? This is it. I accept this. But the two big regrets I had, because I had a bunch of small regrets. I want more money. I wish I kissed more girls. You know what I mean? But I had two big regrets. It was I never learned to ride a motorcycle at the time, and I never got to do comedy. And so if I somehow survived the night, I would. And I had this long gash to the side. It was like 4 inches long, 2 inches wide. I pressed it down. It clotted. I survived the next morning. And then 6 months later, I took a comedy class, which is not, it's most comedians go out there one day and just do it. I took a class because I didn't know what I was doing, but I said I got to put something in motion. And Adam Barnhart has been a godsend to me because he never tried to tell me how to write a joke. He used to open for Andrew Dice Clay in the '70s as an open. By the way, Andrew Dice Clay went to my high school, but Adam Barnhart was an open gay man back in the '70s. And if you know Andrew Dice Clay's audience, they were not going to be forgiving of someone like Adam Barnhart. And it's like, look, if he can go and face his fears, I could do that too. And so it became this perfect storm of like dreams and life events and meeting the right mentor. And on August 10th, 2014, about 24 hours before Robin Williams passed away, I got to be on stage for the first time.
Wow. And I think you had a bunch of friends that came to see you too.
Yeah, I messed up, man. The first time you're like, man, I don't want anyone to see this. But a friend that I was acquaintance with on Facebook wanted to go because she was in town, because she was like out of city. So I sent her a private Facebook invite. I mistakenly made the invite public. And that night, I had 17 friends hanging out going, we want Flobo, we want. I was like, guys, I have a 3-minute set. It's not that big of a deal. So, yeah.
Who are some of your like favorite comedians, just in general?
Yeah, it's one of those questions where, again, I'm a big Leno fan. I know it's not cool to say that. I think everyone who's a comedy says, "Oh man, that's the chef who made hamburgers," right? But I thought there's some power in writing, quote unquote, writing new material every day. That was the biggest influence. I remember Trevor Noah before he got big in the United States. He had one of my favorite comedy albums is one called Crazy Normal, which was when he was big in South Africa, but an unknown here. And back in South Africa, events are like 2 hours, right? So imagine just an hour and a half, 2-hour comedy material. But what made Trevor Noah so great is that he found a way to make South African politics funny and totally relatable to an American. I had no idea who Jacob Zuma was, or the Scorpions were, or Shabir Sheikh was, but he basically personified that. So when he got the job at Daily Show, I go, perfect hire. I thought to be able to educate people and make them laugh is something I always wanted to do. Whether or not it's me trying to navigate my 30s or just me growing up the way I grew up. I had immigrant parents growing up in New York City. We were together in the mix. We were all separate in our own separate way. You're in Jersey, you know how that is. For me to entertain, to make you laugh and make you think, that's like the trifecta. So Jay Leno, Trevor Noah, Chris Rock. I will say Dave Chappelle as a writer as well. I do think that those guys are top tier for me.
Okay. You said something really interesting. Trevor Noah's ability to take the situation in South Africa. This is kind of heavy, and find something to laugh about. I mean, that's kind of hard. And I think the godfather of political comedy began with Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
And I have all his albums over there in the corner. Literally, I have all his vinyls, because he addressed society when society wasn't ready to have it addressed, and he messed around with the church, and then they sent cops in, and they started busting him for obscenity.
Oh yeah, people don't know back then you had to be licensed to be a comedian. Yeah, and Bruce would like violate that license all the time, all the time.
Yeah, and his whole life was such a battle, and most of his life he was battling in court to get the judges to hear his bit that it's not bad, and he's using bad words, but they're just words. Anyway, but so I'm gonna kind of check Trevor Noah out. I mean, I know who he is and stuff, but I want to listen because there's an art to comedy.
Oh, absolutely. Crazy Normal is my favorite.
So the other, I found, all this commonality, and the other strong commonality is wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's been a big part of your life. So why don't you talk a little bit about wrestling, and how did it happen?
Literally on the back cover of that book, I say everything I learned in life, I learned through wrestling, and it's absolutely true. Much like the New York Mets, my dad, my dad came to this country in the 70s, and it was like America full tilt, baseball, apple pie. But to me, wrestling is like what Shakespeare was back then. We think of it as high art now, but back then Shakespeare was the Michael Bay of his time. He wrote stories for the people in the balconies who had little binoculars and the unwashed masses on the ground. It's theater in the rounds. You have to emote, you have to perform. There's stories, there's characters. You can really get involved. And yes, it's predetermined, but so are the best. Hamilton was predetermined. You know what I mean? Like, why not enjoy it? So it's an art form I love. And frankly, now as an adult, it's actually started to give back to me. I mean, I'm on a podcast on Spotify where I get to talk about that with an audience every week. And that's been a blessing. But what I learned about relationships, betrayal, friendships, giving yourself completely to a character or to a bit, I got from professional wrestling for sure.
I mentioned to you before we went on air, I was gifted to have met via LinkedIn and social media, like you and I met, the two guys who produced this documentary about wrestlers, 350 days. So I mean, you had a whole bunch of wrestlers, and they're talking about their lives. And for me, you just don't realize that they had to work 350 days a year to earn a living.
Yeah.
Not easy.
Not
It's
easy at
just
all. I've never wrestled. One of my day jobs is that I DJ weddings, right? DJ Flobito, live in the mix. And sometimes I wonder with my 50 events about me getting up, me going to the venue, setting up all my gear, switching into a suit, giving everyone their announcements. Please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Smith, giving the music, giving everyone all this energy, all these good times, and having to break down, drive that lonely road back to your house and take a nap. It is a lot of a mental strain on top of, hey, the times when my bones hurt or I've indigestion, having to push through that. Like, no one really talks about the mental strain it takes to be a performer. And I think wrestlers had it the worst because at the end of the day, the American public used to say, well, you do one of those things. It's almost taboo. You know what I mean? You're a wrestler, whatever, you know? And what they did is they really sacrificed their body for our enjoyment, like gladiators.
correct. It's beyond me, and I've seen so much of it, what they do and how they do it. And it is I guess it is an art form, you know, the land the right way, and I mean everything they do, and it is entertainment. I mean, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I like your journey from being a commentator to trying to be an announcer that one night, and you got disappointed.
Oh.
And I think I wrote, I'm looking, so I took some lessons, I took notes. So on that piece you wrote in graduation day.
Available now on Amazon.
Yep, it is on Amazon. Actually, I'll make sure the Amazon address is on here. But John Ian, who guided you,
Rest in peace.
the words I took away from that piece was opportunities matter, and to be consistent, and I've tried to live, and those are powerful words of advice. Give them the show.
Mm-hmm.
Another powerful piece, you know. So there's a lot of powerful stuff that really
Thank you.
you can pull from here about life, and it's life lessons from the real world, and these really are life lessons. Powerful stuff. You know, I've tried to live my entire adult life trying to be consistent, because I knew that was really important. Consistency. Everything I do now, I try to be consistent.
Right.
It is important. So it's a great lesson. So let's go back to graduation day, and I know you said you almost didn't write it, but
Right.
you did. And what was the writing experience like, and how long?
Yeah.
And
It's so I want to say so I think last October I wrote the prologue because I knew, so the whole conceit of it is when I graduated my undergrad here in Florida, or there in Florida, excuse me, I didn't like my convention speaker. I felt like of all the people you could have totally pulled to tell us how to live our life, our guy kind of just checked out early. Let's just be honest with you. And I go in detail as to why. And so I always had these things knocking about in my head. But last October, I wanted to write my next novel. I wanted to write the great American novel, but for something, it kept gnawing at me. Like, look, man, you have all the time in the world to write a novel. No one bought your other one. If you really want to share what you've learned, especially now with my content network ramping up and people try to ask for advice all the time, what some advice have you used to help you out with your weight loss? Advice you use to try things again, if it and love, in a way where it doesn't sound preachy, right? Because I live in the Instagram generation now where everyone has whole paragraphs of how they dug deep, and you're like, oh, come on, you're doing it for the likes. And so I said, if you were my family, if you were my cousin, my brother, or my little sister, how would I tell you about things that I've went through in a way that you can take it if you want, or drop it if you don't? That doesn't take forever to read, you know?
that's just great. That is, there are 3 segments We already covered you trying comedy for the first time, and you lost a tremendous amount of weight. And I'm curious, I didn't get to this. How you got lost in Italy on a job?
Oh, that was fun, man. You plan everything. So I got booked to do a wedding in Italy because it was an Italian American couple, but they wanted an American DJ because there's certain American hits that they know that Italian DJs won't know, and they had the gear there. All I had to do was go and plug in stuff. And I didn't know a word of Italian. I took a couple of years of Spanish in school, which thank goodness, because I understand syntax now, and some words are easier to translate that way. But I was supposed to go to this small town off the Amalfi Coast. Now, the Amalfi Coast is a giant tourist trap, but this wedding was in November, so the tourist season was closed. So anyone that was there was just people who lived out there. And flying into Rome, driving to Naples, or training to Naples, and now I'm in this, trying to look for this small town, me going almost cockily, I'll use my Google Translate, and it failed. For whatever reason, I'll go in detail in the book, it fails. And the security you had in your mind of just posting up in Italy and taking in the Mediterranean and playing to a crowd of saying, DJ, we love you, goes out the door. And it was the first time in a long time where I felt scared. I felt that I was alone. I felt that I got defensive, what they call the ugly American. Like, you get kind of like, what do you guys know? Does anyone here speak English? And I can tell you this, Calvin, I never thought I was that person at all. I always thought, oh, don't worry, cool hills will prevail. What you need to do is this. And for me to go through that and get my frustrations out to this poor innkeeper who listened quietly and upgraded my room, even though it really wasn't her fault, I was lost, made me realize two different things. It was, I can be that person. I can go that place. And two, so many times we sit in our pulpit and we go, oh, I would never do that. Why would he say that? I wouldn't do this. But in the thick of it, your whole mind changes because you go into almost like a survival flight or fight mode. So I guess I learned to be more patient with myself, to be more forgiving of other people who experienced my wrath. The wedding went fine, by the way. It was great. The wedding was great. Amalfi Coast was amazing. It got me 2 gigs after that because it was like, oh, this guy is so dedicated to his job, which was important for me for new business. But I would never forget Italy at all.
We did the Amalfi Coast. I won't do it again because we did this bus tour up this mountain.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Positano. I don't remember which town it was, but it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you're and I have a problem with heights. I don't do heights very well, but it's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
It's wonderful and beautiful, and the food, and it's a magical place, but the heights got to me. Yeah.
You ever know how scary it is when you look at a sign looking for help and it's in a foreign language? You're just like, what? You're rubbing your eyes and you're just like, what's going on?
Scary.
Yeah.
And then if you have to rely on Google Translate, if they make one mistake,
yeah,
you're in trouble.
Totally.
Anyway, that's another. And of course, I worked for an Italian company for 25 years. We talked about that, Luxottica.
Yeah.
So I years ago, I'd gone to Italy. They took the managers to Italy, and the factories were in the northeast corner on the Dolomites, way up in the mountains, in God's country, and near the Alps. And of course, my boss is the richest, was then, is now the richest Italian in the world. So we ate really well and we drank well.
Of course, yeah.
And that's my image of Italy, and it kind of stays that way even to today. So you do. I mean, you're so diverse in the things you do, and that's what kind of magnetized me. So you do stuff as a digital content producer. You're a ghostwriter, copywriter. You want to say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, you know, the copywriting thing came between jobs when I was still trying to navigate the corporate America waters. I'm not going to say the legality of it all, but there's research assistant sites out there. If you needed help with a study guide for a term paper, you could apply. And on the back end, I'll be one of those people that. So what was cool about that was for a good 2 or 3 years, I had knowledge about practically anything. Chinese history didn't matter, aviation, no problem. You became like, because you're always learning, always researching to provide people with these study guides they can use for whatever they want.
Right.
But the content creation side really came from the pandemic. I had a living girlfriend for about 7 years. We broke up. And so when we broke up in 19 of October 19. So my first show was just me opening my laptop. It's called What's Up, Flobo. And I'd say, hey guys, this is me in my house. This is something I ate this week or a movie I watched. But from October 19 till March 2020, when the pandemic started, I had all this time alone. And as a comic, comedy clubs are going to be the last place to come back full bore because they're designed to get people packed in rooms as tight as possible. So everything I did after that, making other shows or trying to bring comedy to shows and even New Amsterdam Network, came from the pandemic. Like I have 7 podcasts now. I get to host that. I get to do the video game shoutcasting thing as that. And also my video game name is Novanta, which is the Italian word for 90. How about that? And other things were because of just me being locked in my room. So,
off topic.
oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah, this is just a quick off topic thing. I always love to ask this. It's generally a one word answer. So here, it's a great question, actually. So here it is. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Ooh, see, you asked me this as a teenager. I'm like, oh man, Calvin Ayre, he's so cool. He's like my, every kid has like a billionaire like hero, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. But you know what? I gotta say, my childhood hero, man, Tony Danza. If I got a chance to sit with Tony Danza, my life would be complete. I would retire. You wouldn't see me again. Yeah, he does everything. He's the Renaissance man,
Yep. He was a boxer.
Ukulele player, teacher. What else has he done? A jazz singer. His version of An Evening in Rome is what I think about when I go to Italy. Think about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actor, yeah.
Okay. By the way, this is just great. How the chemistry here and how we met and how fast. God, I love Zoom. And somebody just asked me the other day, do I want to go back to doing my TV show? And that was a great question. I said, why? When I can go to Lebanon or I can go to Los Angeles, and I mean, this is great. And and I've actually I ordered this chair 2 years ago from Amazon, and it's actually worn out.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now. It's down to the raw stuff here. But this has been great, and we're gonna kind of move on. So please talk about new KNEW.
Yeah.
New Amsterdam Entertainment.
So that kind of started as a notebook company, also referenced in the book, but it was a notebook company that for whatever reason didn't work out. I had an advertising plan. The reason why I did notebooks, because as a comedian, all my comedian friends, despite the fact we have note-taking apps, we still write. Even my rapper friends will write their lyrics or write their jokes on notebooks. But when it came to notebooks, Moleskines were like $16 a book, and then cheap books fall apart. So I had this cool stationery company. The advertising budget dried up, and so sales dried up. And so I had the URL, I had the name of New Amsterdam because, one, I'm from New York, and that's the ancient name for New York when the Dutch took it over the first time, because they eventually called it New Orange, but the first time it was called New Amsterdam. And two, the KNEW was a pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of creativity, the pursuit of lightening yourself. So KNEW, Amsterdam.com. Now, during the pandemic, I had just mentioned I got into podcasting and all of that, and I was a DJ for weddings, and I reorganized the business to make myself eligible for relief, because all my jobs were, so I was self-employed, but I wasn't an entity. So everything, the podcasting, the video game commentary, the DJing, all needed to come under one single house. And I said, you know what? New Amsterdam Radio, of all my podcasts, is the longest tenured one. I have over 192 episodes, 130 of them are canon. I'm going to name it after that. So New Amsterdam Radio became New Amsterdam Entertainment, and all my podcasts as under the brand. So if you go to newamsterdam.com, KNEWamsterdam.com, you can see more about me, the shows I run, and all that jazz.
Great. Wonderful. Mac Mania.
Yeah, Macmania. So imagine this. Imagine watching pro wrestling your entire life. That Spotify, the network that has given Joe Rogan a buttload of money, has decided, look, we're going to bring our own wrestling slate in-house, and you're going to be on one of the shows.
Wow.
Evan Mack, one of my good friends, we worked together at an entity called AfterBuzz. He worked for WWE for a couple of years on their show called The Bump. Is the lead of the show. That's why it's called Macmania. And he brought on Jack Farmer and myself to be panelists. And every Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. on the West Coast, we get up and we talk about the news and the events of what's happening in professional wrestling, the leagues, the players, the injuries, the pay-per-views. We do it in a breezy morning show format, because a lot of wrestling fans get to lament and go, back when I was a kid, it was better. Like, no, we treat it as if we're super fans. We treat it like it's a sport, like any kind of sports talk. And it's just been a lot of fun. Airs Tuesday. It's a Spotify original, but it broadcasts wherever you get your podcasts from the Ringer Network. So the Ringer is where Bill Simmons owns. Pete Rosenberg's a stablemate of ours. Dave Shoemaker's a stablemate of ours. But our show is called Macmania, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Wow. So we're kind of winding down this segment, and I'll say it now. I said it before we went on air. Please come back in any shape, way, or form. I'm here. I sit, and I'm not going to get rid of this chair, so I'm sitting in it. So please do come back, and because this has been so much fun.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, really. So you do stuff with esports, shoutcasting, announcing.
Yeah.
And maybe talk about the rise of esports, etc.
Sure. Again, as a 90s kid, video games were a thing you did for an hour a week before your mom took your controller away and said, go play outside, right? So to see not only video games becoming sports where people are training and winning, now parents are like groupies and they're bringing their kids to esports practice, blows my mind. But this is another thing that came out of the pandemic, which is why I have mixed feelings about it. I know it's a bad time for a lot of people, but it really let me reevaluate what I wanted to do. There's a game I like to play. It's called Rocket League. It's basically cars playing soccer. So imagine you drive a car, you hit a ball past the net instead of players kicking it. I play that for leisure. In fact, the games are so short. When I was always stressed out, I would play a couple rounds of Rocket League. I was in a senior league for people who play the game over the age of 30, where they had a tournament and they said, hey, you're a comedian. Do you mind telling jokes over these games? And by jokes, I mean like really cheesy, like move over grandpa, or it's nap time, geezer, like things like totally offensive stuff. No offense, right? But what happened is after that, people came up to me and they said, hey, you should probably do this legitimately. You should do it for a long time. And so put my name out there. And I named myself Novanta, which is the Italian word for 90 for two reasons. One, the game is car soccer, and in soccer, usually games are 90 minutes long. The net is considered upper 90 or lower 90. But two, when I was on my way back from the wedding was in Fiore, and I had to go to the Naples train station to go to Rome, I was stuck in the Naples train station because I had no money to do anything else. I basically blew my budget. And there was an Italian rapper, his name was Salmo, that had a song called Novanta Minuti. And it sounded so rough and raw. I was like, oh man, I don't know what he's saying, but I'm naming myself after that. So esports has been like the extension of professional wrestling, talking about the psychology of players, making sure that when everyone's playing this video game, they feel like a superstar, a celebrity. It has been so much fun.
Wow. This has been great.
Oh, thank you.
This has absolutely been great. Please do come back.
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna finish doing this. But I jumped to the actual commencement speech, which I jumped to the end, which I love. I mean, to do that, it's just great. So yes, on Amazon, and Flobo, I can't thank you enough for being gracious, and your time and your energy and your spirit, and to be continued.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me. And,
Oh, no.
I love the show.
Yeah, thank you. So come back. Thank you.